The sun hit the concrete hard, throwing up heat waves that made the air shimmer around the hangars. Helicopter blades sat still but waiting while crews moved like they'd done it 1,000 times. Everyone had something stitched to their chest. A call sign, a crest, a past you could read at a glance. She didn't have any of that. No badge, no rank, just a plain flight suit and a helmet tucked under one arm. Her boots were dusty, her walk steady. She stepped onto the tarmac like she belonged even though nothing about her said so. A junior crewman tried a salute halfway up, then let it drop. Someone near the door asked if she was looking for the logistics trailer. Another laughed under his breath and said she probably brought the admin files. She didn't answer. Not with words. Just kept walking. One nod here, one glance there, like she heard everything and planned to remember it. Near the fueling station, a pilot leaned against a crate. Arms crossed, smirk easy. He asked if she was there to double-check their checklists or hand out fresh pens. His crew chuckled. None of them moved. She looked once calm and without expression, then turned toward the side door without saying a thing. Behind her, the conversation shifted back to fuel estimates and sling ratios. On her hip, barely visible beneath the flap of her pouch, was an old notebook, the kind no one used anymore. A pencil clipped to the cover. No one noticed. She crossed behind the hangar wall as another flight crew walked past. Their gear was loud. Her silence was louder. By the time the wind caught up and carried the dust across the pad, she had already disappeared into the maintenance bay. They didn't ask who she was. Not really. They just assumed. And like most assumptions, it was going to age badly. They didn't know it yet. But she wasn't there to file anything. She was there to remember everything. Her name was Cassie Ward, though hardly anyone used it. Most called her clipboard dispatch or just nodded as she passed. She never corrected them, never offered more than what was needed. She was 38 with the kind of quiet posture that didn't ask for space, but somehow always found it. Her flight suit had no markings. Her boots were worn at the toes, and her eyes watched everything without ever asking permission. She carried a notebook frayed at the edges with a pencil tucked neatly into its spine. No one knew what was inside that notebook. Some guessed it was logistics. Others said she just liked writing things down to feel important. But when she opened it, her pencil moved fast, and her eyes didn't drift. Cassie walked the base like she had always been part of it, yet belonged to none of it. She didn't linger in groups or share stories over lunch. She sat with her tray alone, half-finished eyes scanning wall maps and crew rotations like they might shift at any second. People mistook her for a clerk or an observer from base logistics. She let them. When someone taped a toy propeller to her locker, she peeled it off, folded it once, and placed it in her pocket. No reaction. No words. She checked every rotor manifest by hand, every tail number logged, every fuel intake cross-referenced with real-time data. She wrote small and tight, but her lines were crisp, and she never scratched anything out. Marcus, one of the younger pilots, noticed that she always walked the hangars before sunrise. She moved through the dark like it was nothing new. Her flashlight beam caught details others missed: a cracked blade edge, a loose seal. No one asked where she trained. Her record said she came from Central Command assigned to support logistics coordination, but nothing about her felt like support. She never missed a morning brief even if her name wasn't on the ops board. She never interrupted. But if you looked closely, she was always listening. Griggs once laughed loud enough for the room to hear. Said she probably collected checklists like baseball cards. Cassie didn't blink. She flipped her page and underlined something only she understood. That silence started to bother people. Not because she said too little, but because nothing seemed to rattle her. She never defended herself. She never pushed back. But she was always there, always watching, always writing. She didn't chase credit. She didn't care who got the laugh or the lead seat. But when systems failed or numbers didn't add up, her notes always had the answer tucked between lines. The instructors looked past her. The crews ignored her. But slowly that comfort faded. Cassie's stillness made noise in places they didn't expect. Her presence wasn't loud. It was steady, like wind pressing against glass. You don't hear it at first, but after a while you realize it's always been there. Cassie Ward didn't demand attention. She earned it by outlasting it. And though no one said it out loud, some had started to wonder what she was really doing there. Not just writing, watching, preparing. Because whatever her story was, it hadn't started here. But it was going to change everything. The base stretched across the Arizona desert like it had been carved straight into the dust. Sunlight bounced off concrete, bounced off mirrored sunglasses, bounced off the silver blades of helicopters lined up in rows, too perfect to be accidental. Every corner of it carried the same message. You were either someone here, or you weren't. Pilots walked like they owned every inch of it. Flight suits were pressed sleeves rolled just enough to show off forearm tags and winged patches. Call signs were sewn bold across chests, always visible, always loud. The hierarchy wasn't written anywhere, but it didn't need to be. It lived in how people nodded to each other, who got called by their nickname and who didn't get called at all, who had a seat in the main briefing room and who stood in the back with the logistics stack. Griggs ran most of the air drills. He talked fast, moved faster, and never repeated himself. His crew followed him like gravity. They slapped shoulders, traded jokes, mid-flight checks, and always left room to be louder than the room required. No one questioned the swagger. It was the price of fitting in. Flight hours confirmed lifts, kill ratios in simulation. That was currency. Humility wasn't. Instructors kept pace. They pushed the teams hard, demanded perfection, then laughed about the pressure over coffee. It was a world where mistakes made you sharper, but only if you recovered with enough charm. Confidence was valued more than caution. Presence more than precision. Cassie didn't have any of those things. Her uniform didn't carry a name. Her steps didn't draw eyes. She moved through the hangars like background noise. Quiet. Always watching. Never getting in the way. When she walked into a room, conversation didn't stop. It just shifted. A pause here. A glance there. Enough to mark her, not enough to say it out loud. They didn't know what to do with someone who didn't play the game. She didn't try to impress. She didn't try to belong. That made her presence confusing. At lunch, she sat alone at the table by the back wall. Her tray always looked the same. Plain. Half-eaten. Her eyes on a page, not on the room. Griggs's crew filled the center row. They joked loud, tossed fries across trays and made bets on which team would mess up next in drills. She didn't laugh, didn't react, but somehow she heard everything. Her notebook came out during briefings even when she wasn't officially on the flight board. She took notes no one asked for. She underlined flight times, crosswind shifts, and tail numbers from 3 simulations back. No one asked for her input. No one looked her way when the mission map was updated. But she kept tracking every movement, every error, every detail that the others missed in their rush to finish first. Sometimes Marcus watched her, just for a moment, saw the way she moved around the board after hours, how she recalculated rotor drift when no one was looking, how she erased old chalk lines and drew cleaner ones, by hand. Others ignored her, or pretended to, but some started to wonder what exactly she was doing there. Not enough to say it out loud, just enough to change the air a little when she entered the room. The base didn't have space for outliers. It ran on speed and noise and posture. It didn't value stillness unless it came from a hovering bird in perfect formation. Cassie stood in sharp contrast to all of it, not with defiance, but with patience. She waited. She listened. She worked like someone who already knew how it all ended. And in a place where rank meant everything, that was the most unsettling thing of all. Cassie noticed the numbers the night before. The fuel projection for the third chopper didn't match the wind conditions expected after waypoint 6. The drag would build faster than accounted for, especially with the tail weight listed on the loadout. She penciled in a note, folded the page, and marked the edge in red. During pre-brief the next morning, she stood at the back while Griggs paced in front of the map full of energy. When he paused to take a breath, she raised one hand slightly. She didn't speak loudly, just enough for him to hear. She said the fuel draw looked tight on the return leg, suggested either lightening the load or shifting the angle of re-entry. Griggs smiled without looking at her directly. Said that was cute. Asked if she wanted to come up and teach the class next. The crew laughed. Not mean, just loud enough to move on. She didn't reply. She lowered her hand and turned back to her notebook. The printout she'd marked stayed on the table untouched. The sim launched just after midday. 3 choppers lifted in clean sequence with Griggs leading the comms. Everyone moved like they'd rehearsed it 100 times. Cassie watched from the edge of the telemetry station. Her pencil sat still. Her eyes followed the numbers on the screen. When the third bird dipped below threshold, she already knew why. Fuel draw spiked. Rotor strain increased. They didn't adjust in time. The chopper slowed, then dropped. The console flashed red. Crew lost. Mission failed. No one said her name. Griggs pulled off his headset and muttered that second-guessing a solid plan always screwed with confidence. Said maybe next time they'd leave the math to the pilots. Cassie stood, walked to the table, and picked up the folded printout. She didn't say a word, just tucked it into her notebook and left the room. Back at her desk, she opened a new page. She didn't change the calculation. She didn't cross out the old one. Just added a small date in the corner. Then she turned the page and started again. The tag was bright yellow, slapped onto her locker like it belonged there. Bold black letters spelled out flight denied, the kind used to ground faulty gear. It hung crooked, tilted slightly like someone had laughed while sticking it on. Cassie looked at it for only a second. No sigh. No pause. She opened her locker, took out her notebook, and walked away. In the briefing hall, the others spoke louder than usual. A few glanced her way as she moved past. No one said her name. No one had to. She sat at her usual desk in the corner, opened to the last page, and began logging corrections from the morning run. Wind direction had shifted slightly on the ridge. She adjusted the map and noted the likely turbulence points for tomorrow's drills. Marcus walked past her desk on the way to his simulator check-in. He didn't stop, didn't speak, but he glanced at the logbook as he passed. Her writing was small and clean. Every number sat exactly where it should. He saw the way she double-checked telemetry after everyone else had left, the way she traced routes on transparent overlays, then erased them, then did it again until they matched. Her hands never shook. Cassie didn't look up when he passed. She kept working like she had more time than they did, like what she was doing mattered even if no one said it did. Outside, the wind picked up across the tarmac. Someone called out a joke from the edge of the hangar. She heard it, didn't flinch, just turned a page. Marcus lingered near the side entrance, half in shadow, watching her for a beat longer than he meant to. Then he moved on. That night she stayed late. The sim data was incomplete, so she filled the gaps with margin notes and forecast overlays. The locker tag was still there when she returned, fluttering slightly in the breeze. She didn't take it down. She just placed her notebook on the bench, opened a new page, and kept writing. The hallway lights dimmed behind her. Her pencil scratched slow and steady against the paper. Quiet wasn't her weakness. It was how she built her edge, line by line, number by number, preparing for something no one else could see yet. She submitted the revised flight route just before sunrise. It was printed neatly folded once and slid under the edge of the mission board where the sim crew would see it first. Fuel loads were balanced, wind drift accounted for, and re-entry curves tightened. Griggs walked in an hour later, full of swagger and caffeine. He spotted the paper, flipped it open, then shook his head like he'd found a cartoon. Said they were flying, not writing term papers. Cassie didn't respond. She was already at her desk, notebook open, pencil poised. The correction stayed on the table for a while until someone tossed a donut box on top of it and forgot it was there. Briefing moved fast. Griggs walked the team through the original plan again, skipping over the numbers. He joked that the only correction needed was more speed and less hesitation. No one disagreed. The simulation launched at noon. 3 birds lifted clean from the pad formation, crisp. Everything looked perfect from the tower. Cassie sat at telemetry, eyes locked on the fuel bands and angle readings. Within minutes, the same drag pattern returned. Bird 3 started to slow. Altitude dipped. The route shifted just enough to stress the tail. No one noticed until the warning light blinked red. By then it was too late. The simulator froze with the chopper grounded, and the crew marked compromised. Griggs pulled off his headset with a sigh, waved off the data tech, and muttered something about unpredictable crosswinds. He said maybe the team would fly tighter next time if no one whispered doom into their ears before liftoff. No one looked at her. Not once. The room emptied in slow waves, boots echoing off metal and concrete. The printout slid off the corner of the table and landed face down on the floor. Cassie walked over, picked it up, brushed the dust from the edge. She folded it cleanly, pressed it back into her notebook, and left without speaking. Back in her corner, she opened to the next page and began logging fresh numbers. Her face didn't change. Her hands didn't pause. She just wrote. Outside, the helicopters idled in silence. Inside, she kept her rhythm pencil to paper like gravity had already shifted, and no one else had noticed yet. The alarm came just after midday. A wildfire had flared fast across the southern ridge, pushed by dry wind and heat that hadn't broken in weeks. A ground crew was pinned near the edge of the canyon, and the fire line was moving too fast for road teams. Inside the base, everything tilted into panic. Birds were grounded, one in maintenance, two on transport rotation. The ready choppers were hours out. Voices crowded the radio. No one had a plan. Cassie didn't speak. She stood, closed her notebook, and walked toward Hangar 3. Her boots moved with a pace that didn't match the chaos around her. Not fast, just certain. The old Blackhawk sat covered in dust, its rotors stiff, its analog panel ignored for years. No digital nav, no clearance codes loaded. Everyone said it was more museum piece than machine. She stepped inside and ran checks by hand. One switch, one lever, one test at a time. Her fingers moved like they'd never forgotten. When the rotors groaned to life, heads turned across the hangar. Someone shouted that she wasn't cleared. Another said that bird wasn't safe. She didn't stop. Her voice came through the base comms, steady and direct. She called for an open corridor and gave a grid reference. There was no doubt in her tone. The tower stalled for only a second, then cleared her. The Blackhawk rose off the ground with a low, grinding hum. She banked left, then climbed hard into the smoke. Wind shear hit by the ridge, sharp and fast. She adjusted without flinching. The route was one she had mapped 3 weeks back. The numbers held. The margin was tight, but it held. Below, the canyon flickered with flame. Black air wrapped the treetops. The fire crew was pinned against the slope, out of line of sight, their radio signals weak and scattered. She dropped in low. Visual contact only. No guidance. The rear doors opened and the team scrambled aboard, coughing through ash, gripping what they could. She didn't speak, just lifted. The fire pushed up behind her, heat washing over the windshield. She turned into it, climbed again, and rode the edge of the smoke until the sky cleared. At the base, no one moved. The sound of her approach broke the silence. She brought the Blackhawk down smooth and centered, not a jolt in the skids. The ramp dropped. The crew stumbled out, alive, shaken, safe. Cassie powered down the system, flipped the last switch, and stepped out onto the tarmac. Her flight suit was soaked through, her face calm, her eyes clear. She didn't speak to the crowd gathering near the edge of the landing pad. She didn't look for anyone. She walked back toward the hangar, one boot after the other, like she always had. No applause, no salute, just silence stretched wide by something heavier than awe, something closer to truth. They arrived just after roll call. 2 black SUVs pulled up near the command center doors, swinging open before the dust even settled. The Homeland Security insignia on their jackets caught the morning light. Word traveled fast. Crews filed out to the main yard in silence. No drills, no engines, just a slow gathering of boots and questions. Cassie stood near the edge, not in her usual flight suit. Today she wore a tactical shell marked in deep gray. Her shoulders squared, her name tag clipped in bold lettering. Below it sat a call sign none of them had seen before. The lead official stepped forward, holding a binder voice steady and loud enough to carry. He spoke about oversight, embedded audits, risk assessments. He said the woman they had dismissed as admin was not logistics. She was command. Federal Aviation Safety Advisor. Clearance Level 3. Her presence had been classified for 30 days. Her notebook was not a habit. It was a record. He listed the failures. Ignored reports. Simulation errors. Missed corrections. Griggs' name came up first. Then 2 others. Then a 4th. They were relieved of duty, effective immediately. No appeal. The yard was still. Some lowered their heads. Others looked straight ahead. No one spoke. Cassie stepped forward only when asked. Her steps were measured. She looked exactly the same, but something had shifted. She didn't move like she belonged. She moved like she led. The official handed her a new clearance band and stepped aside. She didn't address the crowd, didn't offer a speech. She just stood there, notebook in hand, call sign showing. She nodded once toward the command station, then turned. That was all. No applause followed, no murmurs of disbelief, just a long silence that said more than anything else could. Marcus stood near the back, eyes locked on her. He looked down once, then back up. She had been right, all along. People started to move again, but slower, like the weight of what they missed was too recent to walk off. The flags on their suits didn't seem quite as sharp that morning. The air felt different. Cassie didn't gloat. She didn't look for recognition. She walked toward the hangar, not away from it, not to leave, just to keep working. And for the first time, no one questioned where she was going. Cassie left before first light. No announcement, no orders, just a cleared locker and a folded uniform stacked neatly on the bench beside her bunk. Her notebook stayed behind. Inside, near the last page, a slip of paper was tucked between entries. The handwriting was the same as always. Small, precise. Quiet skies are earned. She didn't wait for anyone to notice, didn't leave a forwarding contact, just walked across the tarmac the same way she had walked in. Calm, steady, unseen, until it mattered. No one said goodbye. But the base was different now. The silence felt fuller somehow, like everyone was listening more carefully than before. In morning briefings, chairs were pulled out quietly. Maps were triple-checked. No one mocked the margins anymore. Marcus sat closer to the front pencil and hand eyes sharper than they used to be. He reread flight paths before running drills, cross-referenced loadouts without being asked. When he found an inconsistency, he fixed it without looking for credit. Someone taped over the locker where that yellow tag had once hung, not to hide what had happened, just to mark that it wouldn't happen again. Griggs's name wasn't spoken much, not with anger, just with space around it, like a reminder, or a line you don't cross again. People started asking better questions in the hangar, not louder ones, just better. They ran quieter drills, stayed longer after hours, not out of fear, but out of something harder to name. Every now and then someone would mention her, never loudly, just a few words between tasks. Did you see what she logged in the last sim? Or I think she was already planning for that route change before the wind even shifted. They didn't build a plaque, didn't name a hangar, but in every small habit that changed, you could see her. Respect doesn't need a headline. Sometimes it shows up in the way someone rewinds the footage twice, or in how they leave a margin open for notes they didn't think to make before. Cassie Ward never asked for that. She never waited for it either. She just left what mattered and let it speak when she was gone. The sky above the base looked the same as it always had, but on some mornings when the wind dropped and the light came slow over the ridgeline, it felt quieter. Not empty, just earned.